Today on Simply Happy Conversations, I'm talking with Daniel. He's the CEO of Block Blue Light, which is a premier company and brand here in Australia who have products who help with artificial lights to reduce the artificial LED lights in our homes. So welcome, Daniel.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, awesome to be here and look forward to sharing some of my knowledge on all things light and health.
Yes, your extensive knowledge. So maybe start and tell us some of the things you like to do in your free time
Um,
when you
oh, that's
have
an
free
interesting,
time.
yeah, when I have it, but it's quite interesting because my background, I didn't always do what I do now, and a lot of my spare time was consumed by what I do now, sort of because it was very much a passion project to myself. So really, just diving into all things health and wellness and trying to understand for myself just how to live a better and healthier life. So I got right into sort of understanding nutrition, and so a lot of my time was doing that. And then I got into fitness. So I was actually a competitive powerlifter for a number of years, and I competed in Australia at a very high level. So that was kind of what I've done for a lot of time. Now, what do I do today? Well, I'm actually very consumed inside my business, so that a lot of the time is spent there. But beyond that, it's just trying to get outside and get in nature and go for walks and all that sort of stuff. Really is pretty basic sort of things for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, beautiful. It's great to hear though about the weightlifting and just have that insight behind. But also, it sounds like one of your strengths is that you love learning and love learning about things that have then produced the things that you do in your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So tell us then about the business and how it started.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it started quite a while ago. So coming on like 10 years now. I was coming out of university, and I was studying university. I was studying to a career in IT. So my goals and aspirations were to essentially climb the corporate ladder. That was kind of the dream for me. And coming out back of university, I really started to focus on my own health and well-being, because I was just about to start entering the working world, and I really wanted to make sure I was healthy and able to perform. So I came over to Sydney and started a job with a large insurance company. Um, and at that time as well, I was heavily competing in powerlifting, as I mentioned. And I considered myself a really, really healthy guy by this stage. I was really into all the things I thought I was doing for health. So really, really understanding what nutrition did for me and exercise. And so I considered I was doing all the right things. And within the space of about 2 to 3 months of actually entering and starting this new job, my health really started to take a dive for the worst. So I was getting severe migraines attacks during the day, and then I started to develop severe insomnia at night. So I could get to sleep, but I'd be waking up at like 2 a.m. like wired, and then over time it's slowly started to just put my body into a chronic state of stress with chronic sleep deprivation, and then I was unable ability to focus during the day with migraines was quite quite a struggle. And so I did kind of what most people would do in this circumstance and what I only knew was go to my GP and sort of say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on, but my health is sort of saying struggle. But they just sent me down a path and essentially prescribed me a whole cocktail of different prescription medications to try and band-aid essentially the symptoms I had. And so I kind of went down that path for close to a year. And yeah, I went through a whole handful of different off-label drugs, and they ultimately just made me feel worse whilst my health continued to decline. And I got to a point where they kind of got to a point as well where they're like, well, not much we can do for you, sort of thing. It's like it might be it's all in your head, sort of thing. Maybe try some breathing exercises, sort of thing. And I was like, I don't accept that. Like, because again, like I was so passionate about being into health and being healthy and being vibrant, and having lots of energy. So I was like, well, if that's not going to help me, I'm going to have to like troubleshoot this myself. And at my job by this stage, I was really involved in troubleshooting IT systems, developing, analyzing systems as well. And I was like, well, can I apply that same level of thinking to the human system and to troubleshoot and try and work out what was going wrong. And a key thing that you do when troubleshooting systems is you try to do a root cause analysis to essentially see if the system was working fine and then suddenly it's not, well, something had to change to actually cause that. So that's kind of the path I went on to really understand what's caused all this. And this is the very early days of the internet, so there wasn't certainly the wealth of knowledge we've got today. So it wasn't as simple as just jumping on and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's sort of old sort of internet forums and stuff like that. And I did stumble across a neurosurgeon in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse, and he's a bit more widely known now in the sort of alternate health circles, but it certainly wasn't then. But he had some very interesting concepts that certainly made me go down a bigger rabbit hole to understand what they were. And he was ultimately talking about the human health and human biology is ultimately governed through light, and the types of light we receive are ultimately they're sort of governing all our hormonal processes in the body. But most people have got it wrong, that they're so hyper focused on what we eat and thinking that is going to really control a lot of health status. Whilst it is important, it's far less important. So and a quote that he had back then that stuck with me was like, health is about light, not food. And what he was trying to say there is because at this time, kind of like a lot of different diets were coming on the scene, like there's paleo diet and ketogenic diets and this and that and carnivore, and he was like, it doesn't actually matter, like none of that actually matters, like getting to the fine details of how many grams of carbs you're eating if you're ultimately in the wrong light environment. So I started to just deep dive on all his work and then started to apply some of his concepts. And so what I kind of understood in my own lifestyle was my lifestyle of light had significantly changed. I'd be getting up in the morning prior to sunrise, and I'd be walking to work and then going into an office building with very high levels of fluorescent lighting. And then I was working on a lot of screens during the day. And then by the time I would finish work, so I haven't really been outside in any natural light, the sun was already setting. And then I'd walk to the gym, and then I'd train for 2 hours under more fluorescent lighting. And then I'd walk home, and then I'd work at night. Like I had to do out of hours changes in IT at like 11 p.m. at night. So my whole from waking up to going to sleep, I had no exposure to any kind of natural light. It was primarily all artificially lit light sources. So I decided to start applying a bit more concepts into how I was interacting with light. So I managed to find, so the concept of like blue light blocking glasses or blue light glasses didn't exist back then. Like there wasn't actually a thing, but I did find there was a particular pair of safety glasses that you could use that would significantly reduce your blue light exposure when wearing them. And so what I started to do was to wear them in the evenings when I was working, to block out a significant portion of blue light. And then during the day, I was just trying to get out. So I'd take regular breaks and trying to get outside, going for walks just to get regular light exposure. And within there was an instant change, or I could notice an instant benefit to doing that. And it was the first thing I had noticed in the whole year that had helped. So it was as simple as like going outside and wearing some like $20 safety glasses. And ultimately then through the next like 2 to 3 months, I completely reversed everything that was going on. And I was just like, how can it be so simple? Like, how can, and why is no one talking about this? I've been to some sleep specialists and like some pretty like educated doctors, but they're just trying to find the answer at a prescription pad. And I was like, this is so basic, right? And so from there, I was going to I had no aspirations yet to start a business or anything, but I was like, well, this is I was so like the profound changes that I had made in myself. I was like, I can't be the only one that goes through this, because my lifestyle, I wouldn't consider it to be like radically different to many other people's lifestyles that are in that kind of working world. So I was like, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up a website, and those glasses, I'm going to import like 20 of them from the US, and we'll just kind of, it's just something I'm passionate about, right? So so from there, I've just kind of continued down that path for the last, like 8 years now, that officially in business, and continue to just learn and look at the research and science, and because that's continuously evolving, and creating products, and educating people on how to interact with light better, so it's working in their favor and not against them for health, essentially.
Yeah. So maybe tell about blue light, because I think that's one of the things I love on you. And that's the thing that I share with people when I'm talking about your work that you're doing, is that it's like a reel of I think it's your phone, and you're using that to show blue light in different areas of the home. Maybe share some of the sources of blue light that people are maybe not even aware of, that there's blue light literally around us everywhere, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, I guess if you even take a step back and ask what is blue light, and why should we even be concerned about it? So like blue light is completely natural. It's in nature. We're exposed to it everywhere. But there's a difference between what I'd say artificial blue light and natural blue light. So blue light in nature is is emitted from the sun, but it's emitted with all other colors of the rainbow, essentially. And what that does is it creates what we call full spectrum light. And that's also mixed in with infrared light and UV light. So that's essentially sunlight. And then if we extract the blue light portion of that full spectrum light, and what that does for us is blue light in nature, it is taken in through the eyes and in through the skin, and it activates particular receptors in our eyes they're non-visual photoreceptors. So what that means is they are receptors in our eyes that respond to light, but they're not for vision. We do have visual photoreceptors, which are rods and cones, which allow us to take in signals of light, which is then transformed into the brain for vision. But we have other receptors, which essentially will respond to blue light to sync in with our circadian clock, or the master clock in the brain. And so that's essentially, or our body clock, some people know it as. And so what a circadian rhythm is essentially a 24-hour cycle that our body operates on, and it's governed and the clock is set or governed through both day and night. Particularly during the day, it's the blue light that's telling the brain it's daytime. And so when the brain receives that signal of blue light in the environment, it then will secrete certain hormones and neurotransmitters. So particularly wakefulness hormones like adrenaline and cortisol are released, and we need those hormones to be awake and alert during the daytime. So very, very critical hormones. If we didn't have that blue light to stimulate those hormones, you would feel very sleepy during the day. You wouldn't feel very motivated. And other neurotransmitters also that it creates through blue light interacting on the skin is serotonin and dopamine. So serotonin and dopamine are heavily responsible in our body to regulate our mood and regulate our motivation and energy levels as well. So typically people with depressive symptoms will have low serotonin. And so one of the antidotes for that is getting outside and getting natural light will actually help the natural levels of serotonin be risen. So that sounds all great, except blue light sounds like it's amazing, and we certainly do need it. From the issue is when we look at artificial blue light, which is primarily everything that's emitting a light source that isn't the sun is an artificial light source, and most of the light sources in today's world are LED-based light sources. So that's the kind of the modern light sources. So that would be all of the screens we use, all the phones, all the lights in our home, TVs, pretty much everything now that's digital and has a screen on it or it emits a light is a LED light source. And the difference between the light source from an artificial source in the sun is it's not full spectrum light. So it has very, very high levels of a very narrow bandwidth of blue light, and it doesn't have any of the other spectrums. And the reason that's an issue is because blue light is all light is measured in nanometers or wavelengths, and blue light is a very short wavelength, and it's lower in nanometers. And what that means is that it carries a lot more energy in the frequency. And when you put on a high energy light frequency, you get exposed to that in isolation, which you do it when it's in an artificial light source. It's very damaging to the body. It causes oxidative stress and cellular damage and breakdown. Now, that doesn't really happen in nature because nature has the antidote, which is red light. So red light's a very long wavelength. It's really healing, restorative, and regenerative. So when you mix those two together, the net effect is it doesn't really have a damaging effect. But when we come indoors and we get exposed to all the artificial sources of light, you've stripped all the beneficial wavelengths out of it, and we're only left with wavelengths that cause cellular damage and breakdown. So that becomes a big problem, particularly during the daytime, where we are just bombarded with very, very high levels of that high energy blue light. And that kind of the symptoms we see there is eye strain, headaches, migraines, dry eyes, kind of feeling of like tired but why, a bit of anxiety sort of thing. It's really stimulating your cortisol levels too high as well. So that's a really, really big issue. But then the even bigger issue is what it's doing to us at nighttime, because whilst it's expected that we should be exposed to blue light during the daytime in balance from full spectrum light, at nighttime there's no such thing as a natural source of blue light. The sun sets, and then in nature there is no blue light. But now in the modern world, when the sun sets, what do? We just turn on all our light sources because we're not ready to go to sleep. We don't want to live in the dark. Even if we look at like thousands of years of what our ancestors used to do, like caveman, right? They're fire, sort of a fire source. What colors of fire? Well, it's orange, yellow, and red. There's no blue or green light, and what is considered still a natural light source. Even candles don't emit blue light either. So what we're doing now is sunsets. So our body and biology is designed to receive no amount of blue light. It's getting almost the same levels of blue light that you'd get in solar noon. So your brain is now continuing to think it's solar noon when it's 9 p.m. at night or any time past sunset. So the circadian clock, that the body clock that's designed to work on this 24-hour cycle, is kind of stuck at this midday, and it's not able to complete its full cycle, where over certain different periods of the time it's designed to release certain hormones and do certain bodily functions that now get either delayed or don't happen at all. And so over the long term, that starts to cause chronic health problems. And the first one we see is insomnia or sleep problems. And the reason for that is if your brain thinks it's solar noon when it's not solar noon, it keeps your cortisol levels elevated, which is the wakefulness hormones, and including adrenaline, and it will suppress the hormones that make us feel sleepy and want to go to sleep and stay asleep, which is melatonin. So melatonin is one of the kind of the master sleep hormones that people commonly know it as a sleep hormone. Will be suppressed as high as 85%. Will be suboptimal levels of melatonin being suppressed purely by the fact that your body's doing exactly what it's designed to do, which is when it understands it's daytime, it's designed to keep you awake, which is exactly what it's doing. And so evolution takes, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years to occur. And we've rapidly changed our light environment in the short space of, even now, it's even like, well, it's about 100 years of electricity, but like even just in the last 10 years of just moving to this LED light source, the brain doesn't understand the difference between blue light from the sun and blue light from your LED light to your screen. So biologically, it's very confused, and it's doing what it's kind of been designed to do.
So this is like leading to like health issues like worldwide, because I mean, here in Australia, it's LED is what we're expected to buy. Like, isn't it, to save the environment, but we're not actually saving ourselves, are we?
Correct. So so LED light, the question is, well, why would we start using this type of light source? And so historically we've used a heat-based light source, which is incandescent or halogen. And whilst that wasn't a perfect light source, it wasn't too bad. It still had blue light in it, but it was very, very low amounts of blue. It actually had a lot of red and the infrareds and all these regenerative, restorative wavelengths. But the issue with that was it's the way it produces light is through heat. So it heats up a filament, and it's very energy inefficient, because to create light through heat, it's predominantly creating a lot of infrared light, which is actually really, really good light. But from just purely being able to visually see, it's inefficient. So when the LED technology was created, a lot of policy was put in place for sustainability to move to this type of light source, because it's very energy efficient. It doesn't really use much. It doesn't produce any heat. There is no infrared light produced from it. And the lifespan of the light are very, very long. So the replacement cycle is not nearly as short as incandescents, which can blow quite commonly. So the material wastage and constantly having to change your light bulbs. So all under the umbrella of we need to save the planet and do everything right for the planet is fine. But one important element that's been completely disregarded is the people, or every living thing that is actually living on the planet it's destroying their health. So we are moving into an age where literally it is now illegal to import and possess and use incandescent lighting. So like just in the US in 2023, they have now passed a law that it's now you can't import incandescent lighting, and most governments around the world are slowly rolling this kind of policy out. So we'll get to a point, it is almost near impossible to source these old type of lighting sources, but it will become in the not too distant future actually impossible to get.
Wow. Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? It's like we've done the technology, but we haven't really looked into how's this going to affect us as humans.
Yeah, not just humans. It's like everything.
It's so like animals as well. Like, how does it affect them? The same sort of thing. Are you seeing? Is there studies around that as well?
Yeah, there's some, but there are certainly studies on it, and there are certainly looking at like even bugs. If you've seen like a street light,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking outside.
And they go nuts, like, because it's stimulating them, right? And like all sorts of different animals, like are just not designed to be under this light, because they all have their own version of a circadian rhythm, and every living thing on this planet is governed through light. Even plants, if you starve a plant of sunlight, it dies. So if you continue to put different living things under the wrong type of light, and it's not getting it's gonna not thrive, essentially. And it's becoming very apparent in humans that it's certainly not allowing us to thrive the way we should be.
Yeah, definitely. It's light pollution, isn't it, that we're now creating all around the planet. So then tell us a little bit about the technology behind your product, in particular the light globes then.
Yeah, cool. So initially we started with glasses, and that was really designed to use different technology and lenses to either block or filter specific frequencies of blue light, so more obviously completely eliminate it at night and then reduce it during the day. And so we've got a whole suite of glasses for that. But then I was kind of looking at where things were, and using glasses, I felt like it was more of a band-aid solution to a bigger problem. I was like, well, the only reason we need to wear these glasses is because there's so much exposure to this artificial light. So I was like, well, what happens if we could actually change the type of light in the first place that's being emitted? Now, it's not possible to do it everywhere. Like, if there's a lot of screens and phones and stuff, and obviously I don't have the power to start influencing Apple or these big tech companies, but the actual biggest exposure in the home is actually all our overhead lighting. It's not the screens. Like, there's so many lights in a house, like there's 40 to 50 lights. And if we could at least tick that off and have them all more biologically appropriate type of lighting coming out of our overhead lights, it's a significant reduction to start with. So that's where we started to look at how can we actually redesign lighting. And like I said, like trying to use incandescent and the older technology is just near impossible based on the policy that was coming down the pipeline. So we essentially looked at LED lighting and said, well, how can we actually reverse engineer the technology just to look at the things that are wrong with it and see if we can just tweak it and make it make it better for us, essentially. So we created we've got a whole suite of different lighting products that are actually they are all actually LED products, believe it or not. So it's not LED that's actually bad for us, and it gets a bad rap because that's kind of what anyone that kind of is a bit health conscious and understands about light a bit, and so, oh, I've heard LED lights are bad for me, I don't want that sort of thing. Well, LED just stands for light emitting diode, which means there's a little diode on a chipboard that emits light. So if it's emitting the right type of light, then it's actually not bad for us. So that was what we started to look at. And so we just, and the reason most of the light we have from LED is in that narrow bandwidth of blue is because it's more energy efficient, and essentially to create white light, you use blue light. So that's how anything that's really bright and white, that just means it's a lot of blue light in it. So we just looked at using special diodes that don't emit those frequencies to start with. And so generally that looks like a warmer amber color light, or even a red light if you completely strip out the green light as well. And so some people would sort of say, oh, well, I can just go to, the hardware store, Bunnings, and buy a cheap sort of party light bulb or a decorative bulb that's amber or red, right? That should be the solution. And I wish it was that simple, but unfortunately it's not, because those light sources were still never designed to remove specific frequencies. They were just designed to create an ambient color, and most of them are still using a standard diodes with that, and then they're just using a filter on the outside of the bulb to make it that color, but then it still has the blue light in it. It just has more predominant red light than blue, but there's still blue in it. So, or amber, depending on the light color. But yeah, so it's still about actually getting the right, by using specifically designed lighting that is designed to actually eliminate certain frequencies.
That's a great tip that you made, because I could imagine people listening go, well, I'll just go buy, those colored lights. So that's a great tip. And like, we have your light globes, and they have made a huge difference, even for myself. Within the first 2 days of using it, I was feeling sleepy when I was reading my book at night, and just going, gosh, I can't even stay awake within half an hour. I'm like, I've got to go to sleep now. So, and then also the portable one, which I think is great, that you're able to take them with you. Like we took them on holidays at Easter time with us. And again, I like that the idea that you have the glasses, but I know that my kids, there's no way they would wear those glasses all around the home. So it's like having the light globes, and the light globes in the rooms that we're at night. It's not within our whole home. I'd love to eventually, but at least it's in each of the bedrooms, and that's making a difference. And I actually took them to yoga the past 6 weeks with me, and the little ones, as well as my own ones from the bedroom. And so I was talking about it there, about the light globes, and that's what made me go, right, I need to get you on to chat about it. So then what sort of influence can you do, like, out further than just our homes with these lights? Is it being taken up by organizations, businesses, or anything like that?
A little bit. It's a bit of a harder. It's a bit hard to infiltrate into like the commercial workplace. But there is certainly becoming some awareness as employers are starting to look more at the health and well-being of their employees, and we certainly are seeing it being recognised. And we have done some partnerships with even some very, very large companies that have decided to like create a particular area in the office that is using more appropriate lighting for people that are severely impacted. But sort of commercial lighting is a bit of a tricky one, because there's policy and restrictions around that as well, around particular amount of like lux or brightness that needs to be in an office and stuff like that. And it's a whole different level of commercial lighting. But even in just the last few years, we are starting to see some recognition that, hey, maybe the type of lights that I'm having my employees be under for 8 hours a day isn't really the best for their productivity, for their health, for if I'm trying to look after them. So I think we'll see that continue to evolve in the coming years.
So just as a individual at home, what are some of the health effects that they may start to see? And then that reverse when they're starting to use the lights. Like for us, we saw that the kids started to sleep better and go to sleep
Mm.
really easily. And they were reliant on melatonin, and the same for myself. I found falling asleep, it's definitely really quick from having the lights in the home. But what other health effects do people come to you or might come and find your products?
Well, it's very wide ranging because as soon as you throw sleep
Mm.
deprivation into the mix and what sleep, the power of sleep is, yeah, people can really start to have some really chronic health conditions. And mainly it's around hormonal
Mhm.
dysregulations. So it really can start to throw your adrenals off and your thyroid, which govern a whole bunch of biological processes. So, but more commonly at the surface layer, we just see the big ones is I can't fall asleep, or I'm waking up at like 3 in the morning, or I just feel really wired. For kids, it can also be sort of around behavioral patterns and attention to the thing, being like really, really overstimulated and hyperactive. And we get a lot of reports that, now they're a lot calmer and actually able to pay more attention during the daytime as well. So that kind of does link into sleep as well a bit. Um, but those are the main things,
Yeah.
particularly if we're looking at nighttime, is this really like around sleep. The other things though is, so I did mention that melatonin was a sleep hormone. That's kind of what it's like widely known as, but it's actually far, far more than a sleep hormone. So in the body, melatonin is actually one of the most potent and strongest antioxidants in the body. So essentially what happens is your body gets flooded with it whilst you're sleeping, and it's responsible for um, essentially a lot of cellular repair at night. It helps strengthen your immune system. It's cleaning up like damaged cells, potentially cancer cells. So this is one of the most potent things you want for your overall immune health and health in general, is to have very, very high levels of it at night. So if you keep having suboptimal levels of it, you'll potentially find that you get sick more often, and your overall health status can be suboptimal, just purely not based on the sleep you get, but just not having enough melatonin
Yeah.
in the body. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So what's some simple hacks that people can do in their home, like straight away?
Simple hacks in the home.
Yeah.
So a lot of it would be, so in the evening, like you said, you don't have to fit out your whole home or go, oh, I've got all these bad lights in there. But like one of the biggest things, and it's like one light bulb, is like just to, in like at least like after you finish dinner and stuff, like turn all the overhead
Mm.
lights off and just have a lamp, like one or two lamps, and like it's enough low light to use in the evening. So that's a really big one that I just like. It's like you don't have to approach it like, oh, this whole thing's going to cost me thousands of dollars to mitigate. Um, but yeah, even if you don't change the light bulb out, even just bringing the brightness down, not using overhead light. And again, overhead light is a signal of light coming from overhead from the sun. If it's down more at eye level and below, that's yeah, it's much more kind of like the type of light we used to receive. And then potentially using some glasses if you're on screens, but you need to make sure that you're not just going onto Amazon and buying a cheaper $20 set of glasses, because they're not going to really work. Anything that's a clear lens is a waste of time for the evening. It needs to be able to block 100% of it. And I'd just say another thing, which is actually free to do, is just like switch off devices. And not only from a light point of view, but from an actual stimulation to the brain. So the brain gets heavily stimulated through things we watch, and use just something more relaxing, like reading a book in bed or something like that. And if you can actually get the light environment with that, it's much better as well.
Actually, do you know what? One of your tips I took away and implemented straight away was I turn my phone onto night mode all the time now. So I used to have night mode at say sort of 5, 6 o'clock, it would come on, but now I have it all the time, and my body, my brain's got used to it, and it's always the black screen. So I think that was a great tip you shared on another podcast. That's really useful for people to do. And that's that reel that you've got on Instagram, which I think is so valuable for people to go and watch, where you can see the difference when you put the glasses on, and it's the different areas in the home and shining it on a light and seeing the difference of the blue light being reduced,
Yeah.
is so powerful for people to who are real visual people who need to see how it actually works, to see that on your social media page.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that was a cool one, because we've got sort of a spectrometer, which is a very expensive device which we can actually measure all the different light frequencies. And so yeah, we can sort of show like, well, this is the light coming off this, and like the fridge, for example,
Yeah.
and all these other things, and then actually showing, you know, how the lens or a particular lens that we have in our glasses, and how that is impacting those frequencies as well.
Yeah, it's so powerful to go and watch and just see the difference and seeing that blue light being reduced. So
Yeah.
how can people find the products and follow you on social media and your website, the details?
Yeah, so we're at Block Blue Light, so Block Blue Light, or one word.com.au. Yeah, we've got a whole, as you mentioned, we've got a whole bunch of content, educational content on there as well. So probably over about 100 blog posts today on there. But yeah, obviously we've got all our different lighting and glasses over there, and we're always available on chat support and email. Like, we always get questions, so people are going to get confused about what products they need, because it can be a bit overwhelming if you're just stepping into this or just learned about this and you really don't know what to do. Just reach out to us, because we're pretty approachable, and sort of will help sort of guide people into what's probably going to be the best for them. And then on social media as well, so Instagram and Facebook, sort of it's just under the handle Block Blue Light Official.
Yes, it does. Yeah, because there's a few other companies out there with the similar name. But yes, look for. But I'll put all those in the show notes for people to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time and all your knowledge today, Daniel. It's so great to hear, and for other people to be able to now listen to as well.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a lot.